And today I would like to speak with you concerning some aspect related to hot air sterilization as well as steam sterilization. We step back a little bit. We start not from Adam and Eve, but we talk about the history of sterilization a little bit. So since the ancient era, heat was used for sterilization, let's call it. In the latest 19th century, as we've seen in the presentation this morning, there were discoveries in sterilization. The two most important was related to pupils of Louis Pasteur. So Chamberlain, that designed and produced the first steam sterilizer, as well as this unknown French doctor called Gaston Pupinel, that invented in the same period the hot air sterilizer. During the 20th century, a lot of studies have been conducted in order to understand how sterilization is active, is in functioning. So mainly a lot of scientists work on mathematic, let's say, formulas in order to understand how to create a model for the sterilization. Mainly, at the early beginning, was related to the sterilization of food can. Let's say that since that time, the steam sterilization evolved and is still evolving, as you will see in other presentation. But dry heat sterilization reached a stable point, and you will not face any more news in terms of dry heat sterilization. But what was the best and the most important discovery of the history of sterilization is that, as we talked this morning, in reality, we don't have a real sterilization, a real sterile state of our medical devices, and this is quite crazy. So how works sterilization? In the European norms, we consider a device sterile, not when everything has been killed, but where there is a statistic possibility to have just only one device, non-sterile, over 1 million of devices that have been processed. So, for this reason, steam sterilization is considered a very special process. You may know this Deming circle. So the steam sterilization process, or generally speaking, the reconditioning process of a medical device, is not a line process, but is a circle process. And it's called special because you cannot know at the end of the process if you did the good job or not. In other words, just for example, you should consider the sterilization process like the production of matches. If you are manufacturing matches, you cannot have a single employee at the end of the line scratching all the matches just to control if they get burned. Otherwise, you will throw them away, everything. In the same way, in the reprocessing process, you have to check every single stage of the process in order to be sure that every single ring of this important chain is perfectly done, so you can consider that your device is sterile. In terms of, from the commercial point of view, CBM together with DE and e-commerce can provide you different solutions that helps you during the entire stage of the reprocessing. In terms of packaging, we can offer you reusable containers. We have a very wide range of reusable containers that can be a very sturdy packaging solution for your CSSD. We are manufacturing also hot air sterilizer as well as benchtop steam sterilizer and transport devices to transport sterile or non-sterile items all around your CSSD and surgery. So how works sterilization? We see a very good presentation this morning. So we start from a certain point where we have what we call bioburden, so a certain level of infection, let's say more or less, that we don't know. We are not in an industrial environment where we can check how many viable microorganisms we have. So it is tremendously important to reduce as much as possible this first level as low as possible by washing and disinfecting our medical devices. And then we apply time as certain sterilant to... What's happened? No problem. And we reach a statistic level of sterilization of 1/1,000,000 or more. How it works? On hot air sterilization, that is quite commonly still used, especially in the small cabinets or dental field, this effect is obtained by oxidizing the cell constituent by means of adding heat. More or less what happened in your domestic oven. We simply destroy all the cells. It works at a very high temperature from 160 degrees to 250 degrees at atmospheric pressure. Hot air sterilizer in the market can be of two different types depending on the circulation of the heat inside of the chamber. We can have, as we have in the kitchen, we can have a natural convection sterilizer where there is a natural circulation of air because of the cooling, or we can have a fan that is forcing the circulation of the heat inside of the apparatus. The steam sterilization works with heat, but together with moisture, because as we understood and we learned this morning, the heat that is contained into steam is very high, and by condensing over the surface of an organism, this will let the protein to coagulate and become a new molecule that kills, that poison every viable organism that you may have on your medical device. It works normally at 121 degrees or 134 degrees at a higher pressure. So who is the fastest between dry sterilizers and small steam sterilizer to reach this sterility assurance level? By effect of the combination of steam, the small steam sterilizer will be always much more faster than the dry heat sterilizer. On average, we have the half of the time for the entire cycle to reach the sterility assurance level. So what are the pros and cons of dry heat sterilization? Of course, the pros of a dry heat sterilizer is the price. It costs normally 1/5 or 1/10 of a small benchtop sterilizer, so it's much more affordable for a small cabinet. Don't need any water, don't need any consumables, but on the other hand, we have a lot of cons because it works at very high temperature, so if we have very sensible material, we cannot process them into a dry sterilizer. And also, it is quite difficult to use packaging inside of a dry sterilizer. There are some pouches, but are, let's say, very rare, very difficult to find. All the other pouches, there are people that invent any type of method. They moisture the pouches, they moisture the gauze, and they put them inside of a dry sterilizer. But this is not absolutely the correct way to work. So when you are using a dry heat sterilizer, practically you cannot use a packaging material. And of course also the heat distribution is not as precise as in a small benchtop steam sterilizer. On the other hand, the small benchtop steam sterilizer, the autoclaves, work with water, so at least you need a source of demineralized water. They need regular maintenance They are not so complicated to use, but anyhow, when you are purchasing as benchtop sterilizer, you have always to consider that you have to carry out regular maintenance on them. So from the normatives point of view, what we can say about the small steam sterilizers? In Europe, they fall under the European Directive 93/42, that is now more or less dying, let's say, because in Europe entered a new regulation on medical device that will supersede the European Directive in May 2020. The steam sterilizers are classified as a Class 2B, differently from the big sterilizer that you may have in your CSSD. The reference norm is not the EN 285, but is the EN 30 or 60 that is dedicated exactly to the small benchtop small steam sterilizer. So, what is important to know about this norm? This norm gives you information about the type of load, the definition of load, so solid, porous. What is solid, it means that it cannot retain water or air inside. It has no recess, no small lumen inside, so practically, as you can see from the picture, from the odontoiatric point of view, we are speaking about scalers, mirrors, so very simple devices. Porous, of course, is whatever can retain water, so gauze, sponges, whatever, where can remain air trapped inside. And then we have other two, let's say, silly definition. One is called narrow lumen. What is a narrow lumen? There is a specific formula, but of course you cannot take a measurement device and check all the small holes of all your devices. This is just to say that you have to look at the reprocessing instruction that should be provided by the manufacturer of each device, just to understand if your device fell inside of a narrow lumen or a simple oral item. Just to give you an indication, a narrow lumen device is a dental handpiece, because into the dental handpiece there are a lot of small holes that if you take them out and put them together, they will reach some meters with a very, very fine internal hole. And again, speaking about dental handpieces, unfortunately, outside of the hospitals, dental handpieces are not treated so well during sterilization, because oftenly doctors have a couple of turbines or contrangles, and they do not want to sterilize them in between each patient, even if is, let's say, more or less mandatory, even because you have to think that when you go to your dentist, I don't want to scare you as much as I'm scared about the dentist, but you have to know that when the turbine that you have in your mouth stops, at the tip of the turbine, a vacuum is created. So practically the turbine is like a syringe that is inspiring the blood from the mouth. And then if it is not properly washed and then sterilizer, the next patient, the first time that the turbine will be activated, will receive in his mouth your blood or any type of physiological tissue. Unfortunately, this is the scariest part of go to the dentist. So my suggestion is, as I do, always check that your dentist is using a steam sterilizer first, and you have not to find the turbines or contraangle already equipped on the dental chair, but should be pouched, and they should demonstrate you that have been sterilized, because there are several, as we have seen this morning from the early presentation, there are several cases of hepatitis and HIV transmission due to this procedure. On the other hand, a simple hollow item is what is simple hollow: a couple, a basin, something that has a very big hole, but it's very short. Why I'm stressing you on this definition? Because from our point of view as manufacturer of sterilizer, benchtop sterilizer, we have to give you a table practically where we drive you on the selection of the proper cycle you have to use to sterilize every single different item. Another aspect that should be considered is the single layer wrapping and the double layer or multiple layer wrapping. Why I'm saying this? Because the reference norm on benchtop sterilizer states that the manufacturer should classify the cycles into 3 different levels. So cycles type B, cycle type S, or cycle type N. Unfortunately, let's say the market was a little bit confused about this definition. Sometimes we spoke about B-class sterilizer or S-class sterilizer or N-class sterilizer. This is wrong. The sterilizers are all the same from the, let's say, technical point of view. They have to have the same requirements, but what is defined as B, S, or N are the cycles. So you may have sterilizer with B cycle plus S or N cycles. What does it mean? B stays for big, small sterilizer. Practically, the norm considers that this type of cycle is exactly the cycle that you have in a big CSSD sterilizer. So you can sterilize whatever you have inside of this type of cycle. So you may have rapid or double rapid products with narrow lumen or simple solid, whatever you have to sterilize. S stays for special cycles. What does mean special? It doesn't mean that you can place silly things or you can cook something into the S cycle. It means simply that you have to look at the user instruction and look what is being claimed by the manufacturer to be sterilizer with that special cycles. N cycle stays for non-rapid cycle, so ready to use. Anything rapid inside of the sterilizer, and also only solid. So you cannot sterilize a dental handpiece, for suggestion, into an N cycle sterilizer. Well, let's go on, otherwise you will sleep for sure. This is let's say more or less the graph of a normal traditional benchtop steam sterilizer. That is, if you look at your big CSSD sterilizer, they are very similar. Once again, it is very important, of a paramount importance, to remove the air from all the load before to proceed to sterilization. Just to give you a quick comparison, if you take a simple glass, and a basin of water, and you revert the glass upside down, and you try to push the glass into the water will never touch the bottom of the glass, of course, because there is air trapped inside. In the same way, if you have air into the load, the steam will never touch the surface, so will never sterilize. So almost of the steam sterilizer, or let's say the state-of-the-art steam sterilizer, use the fractionated vacuum air removal system. What does it mean? Practically, it's a sort of pumping inside of the load. Here is visualized the dental handpieces where we have the pathogens material at the end, ready to be transmitted into your mouth, and a lot of air trapped into the turbine. And we have first to remove the turbine, the air from the inside. And by altering, let's say, having vacuum and steam injection, this air will be continuously sucked and pumped out from the load until almost of the air have been removed from the turbine, so we can sterilize. Go faster. We are late. Okay. This morning we also see what it means saturated steam. So it's quite difficult to maintain the correct steam condition to have the correct steam sterilization. The brand new steam sterilizer, according to this EN 13060, should be able to evaluate itself if there are the correct performances of sterilization. So, in other words, at the end of the cycle, the sterilizer must give you an indication if the saturated steam was present or not inside of the sterilization chamber. Let's go on. The drying is also another important aspect of the cycle, because especially if you have pouches, if they remain wet, they can be, let's say, damaged, or even worse, the pathogen can pass through the wetted part of the pouches. My suggestion is, when you are using pouches in small benchtop steam sterilizer, or more or less I think is the same even for a bigger, always when you are placing the pouches, you have to have the same material touching the other. I mean, if we have a paper plastic pouches inside of a benchtop sterilizer, the paper should touch the paper and the plastic should touch the plastic. Otherwise, we have seen they blow and the plastic part will cover the steam entrance of the other pouches. And if possible, especially for the benchtop steam sterilizer, to put them vertically and not one lane over the other. Otherwise, you will never obtain the proper drying result. The water quality is of paramount importance even for the small benchtop sterilizer. Of course, you cannot use normal tap water or the aquarium water, as I've already seen in the market, but you have to use at least demineralized water. First, because otherwise you will destroy the machine and you will spend a lot of money to buy a new one. But it is also nice for us, somehow. But second, you will destroy also your surgical instruments, because minerals contained into the water and sprayed using the steam will affect any type of stainless steel surgical instruments that you have inside of the sterilizer. You will have blue spot, yellow spot, rust, jeopardizing stains, so you'll have a lot of different problems. Another important aspect that should be understood, speaking about steam sterilization process, is that steam sterilizer, as we have talked this morning, should be checked every day. So there is a specific norms, ISO 17665, that ask you to carry out daily at least one air leakage test that we can call vacuum test on a daily basis, and the steam penetration test, that is a Bowie-Dick test at least, or you can do Bowie-Dick test and an helix test, as we talked this morning. Another important thing, as the big sterilizer, each sterilizer, even the small, should be validated on yearly basis. So a dedicated company should come and prove that your sterilizer is still working properly, as well as when you have purchased it. So, transferring this concept into our benchtop steam sterilizer, now I will not be so precise in this because we have one over here, so if you need some more information, you can come and ask for us. It's not a problem. Anyhow, our steam sterilizer have been built to last longer, much more longer than the other, with a solution that also reduce the time that is used to reach the sterilization, and also, as I told, let the sterilizer be more long in the time. So the chamber is fully pressed, so it's sturdy. There is a very safe closing system, fully automatic. There is a gasket that prevents the air entrance into the chamber. There is an air removal stage carried out with a triple head vacuum pump. There is a dedicated steam generator. And there is a cooling system, a lot of blah, blah, blah from the commercial point of view. But just to say you that there are many different small benchtop steam sterilizer in the market. A lot of them nowadays came also from China. They are very cheap, cheaper than us, cheaper of all the European manufacturers. But of course, the moment you go to check if they are correctly doing the sterilization, you will discover that you have thrown away a lot of time and a lot of money, and you have posed a very high risk to your patient and to yourself. So I jump over, as I told. If you need something more, we will see later on. We go over. We can also provide you a lot of accessories like containers, big or small containers. It can be also used inside of the small benchtop steam sterilizer, even for creating a small kit like cataract surgery kit or dental surgery kit in order to save money and have a very robust packaging for your very delicate instruments. Performances, I go straight to the end, and I thank you that no one is sleeping now, and I give the chance to another. Thank you.